participate today. I also want to wish our moderator, Greg Lewis, a very speedy recovery. Today, all of our audience will hear about the awareness of the literary crisis, how it impacts the lives of so many individuals and our society as a whole. Next, you will hear from Dr. Deborah Levy, a renowned teacher of reading for over 50 years, a magnificent teacher, trainer, and a motivator of children. She will present the solution that she has developed using 21st century technology. Then you will hear from a special panel of educators, all of whom work in the trenches, so to speak, planning and implementing the programs to educate their students and to prepare for the world after school. Included in this group is our good friend, Dr. Nikolai Vitti, the superintendent of Detroit Public Schools and a national leader in the efforts to turn around schools and help the millions of schools who are desperately in need of help. He is an impressive person and amazing educator. So with that introduction, I'll get started. Okay, can you guys see my screen or do I? Probably not. Share screen and then go. Okay, so this is me. This slide is always very disturbing to me as a non-educator when I take a look at the data. There's an organization called the National Association Assessment of Educational Progress. It's also called the Nation's Report Card. And since 1992, every 2 years, it has been tracking the performance of students across the country in various different subjects. I focus only on reading. And the most recent publication of their data happened only two months ago, and a very small article was in the New York Times, and nothing happened after that. And the statistics say that only 37% of fourth graders and 38% of, I'll minimize this, 38% of eighth graders are reading at grade level. For a country like the United States, with the wealth and the resources, to me, this is something that needs so much attention and so much funding. But literacy problems are not related only to children. And a study done quite a few years ago, but still very valid, more than 40% of adults surveyed had limited literacy skills. Many adults lack the reading skills necessary to navigate many everyday tasks or hold down anything but lower paying jobs, including laundry and dry cleaning workers, food preparation and serving workers, dishwashers, cashiers. This was from Money Magazine last year. The late Bill Ellis, who was a colleague of my wife, Dr. Deborah, and a wonderful person, he told us one day at dinner, if a child is not reading by third grade, there is an 80% chance that he or she will not be reading by eighth grade. If a child is not reading by eighth grade, there is an 80% chance of him or her dropping out of high school. If a child drops out of high school, there is a high likelihood of being incarcerated in the juvenile justice system. And I added this, it costs over $130,000 per year to keep someone in a juvenile detention center. Very sobering statistics. So we believe in early intervention. A nonprofit called Annie E. Casey Foundation is very involved in helping society, especially having to do with education. And according to their white paper called Early Warning, reading on grade level by the end of third grade is correlated with retention and school dropouts. Just minimize this. 74% of third graders who read poorly still struggle in ninth grade, and third grade reading scores can predict a student's likelihood to graduate high school. This spills over into adult life. 50% of unemployed people cannot read. 46 to 51% of Americans who cannot read live in poverty. And there's all kinds of other limitations associated with a very basic skill of learning how to read. I like to read all kinds of materials. And this was from the Brookings Institute, one of their publications. That's a think tank in Washington, D.C. and it is dedicated towards social causes. Just a few weeks ago, they wrote, at 2 decades into the 21st century, the goal should be for all children to become lifelong learners and develop the full breadth of skills and competencies from literacy to problem solving to collaboration. But there again, the word literacy pops right up in the forefront. Learning to read does not come naturally. Children have to be taught to learn how to read. But with all the problems that we're facing with a lack of literacy skills, we have to ask the question, is there a solution? And with that in mind, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Deborah Levy, and I'm going to go into her computer to help her start it.
First of all, I want to welcome our panel. Dr. Garmon has taken over our rural district of Ware County. And we've been there. This is our 3rd year. And it's been a great experience to see how the children have improved. Javier Ocampo is the principal of the middle school, because I wanted you to hear from that point of view, because we are focusing more as a country on K-2, but we have to have a way of going back for our 8th graders and high schoolers. And Ann Flanagan is the head of curriculum and instruction in Okaloosa County, and she is amazing, her insights into reading, and she'll share how she has done her implementation. So with further ado, I want to just get started. And welcome everybody. So you didn't minimize it. Okay, so why, are children not reading on grade level? And of course, it could be genes, poverty. But when I went back last April, because I helped establish the Institute of Literacy, I was called back because when we did establish it, 80% of American children were reading on grade level. And today, about 30 some percent. And the neuroscientists all blamed it on this. For the past 13 years, we have not had in our reading instruction, teaching of decoding, how to break down the words, and how to have a phonological foundation, which is critical. To back that up, this is the research of Torgerson, who showed if those K-3 kids don't get that phonological foundation, which is systematic multisensory explicit phonics program, many of them do not go beyond 3rd grade, 5th month. And before COVID, I was all over the country and I saw that many times. And in one district in Queens, only 3% graduated because they didn't get beyond that. We screened 3,000 kindergartners and found out they came in on the average knowing 6.2 letters. And in 1st grade, not much better, 14. So they start out behind before they start. So NAC Scholar is a unique program because it's just not a software program. It's an enhancer to good teacher training, to good follow-up, because teachers in the universities have not been trained how to teach phonics. So unfortunately, it's up to the school districts to really provide this training. So what's important is that we provide, I think that's an important solution, instructional materials for the paper version, but it's the only ORTON-GILLINGHAM, which online program, which I'll explain in a minute, where the children can practice it. And practice is really important. And a teacher can even meet with the child and see what they've done and how they've progressed. So usually most districts focus on children on the tiers. special education, dyslexic children, learning disabilities, processing problems, and English language learners. So most of the time we provide the solution to this group, but lately we've been getting into the ELA programs because the principals are seeing how important it is. So it's an unusual Orton-Gillingham program because it allows the students to practice. And I tell the story that I'm out here and I've been shown 10 times how to get to where I'm living. And I thought I knew it, but when I went on my own, I got lost and I learned from my mistakes. So just because the teacher's teaching in a small group or one-on-one, which we do, have that availability, until they practice those skills from that teacher, you don't know if they've really mastered it. So I believe for the literacy issue, not a balanced literacy, which we've been doing the past 13 years, where we're, giving kids a lot of books, but if they can't break it down phonetically, they're not going to be able to read those books. So I believe in phonological awareness, word recognition, phonics and decoding, spelling, and then putting it into reading passages. And the beauty of it is if you have an 8th grader on a 3rd grade level, you can go back and reteach. It gives the teachers all that toolkit. To best really show what Orton-Gillingham is about, I had to decode this word when I spoke in Iceland last year. And I really said, this is really what Orton-Gillingham is all about for our kids. They have to learn how to break down those long words rather than skipping them or looking at the first few letters. So it's Golava or Rustiger. So that's what Orton-Gillingham is all about. And I will give you a little background on me and my passion for this. And I know there's a lot of people on the panel today that have that passion. Dr. Samuel Orton was a neuropsychiatrist, and he had high school and middle school kids who could not read. So he hired Anna Gillingham from Columbia University, and she developed the Orton-Gillingham program. Her main protege was Diana Hanbury King, who started the Orton-Gillingham practitioners and was her major protege. And Diana King was my mentor, and she trained me. So I'm like the last living person of this age. And she was amazing. At 91, she went to Australia to establish a Orton-Gillingham program. And she was very passionate about it. And she really pushed me to get help to get this program online because kids like devices. And she worked with me on this, and I didn't think it could work myself because you can see I'm not so great with technology. But the high impact of this program is amazing because when you have Orton trained teachers, you can only work with so many children because there's too many different lessons. And I'm just shocked because the computer doesn't do everything, but it helps place the children. It can be diagnostic and prescriptive. And we've got to give teachers tools and, a toolkit of software, of workbooks, of materials. So it works on foundational phonics, which is blends, phonics, short vowels is 67% of reading. So some children need to go back to learn them because those are the most common words. Then they integrate it into readable text, which is very important in Orton-Gillingham. And then we go on the sound structure to syllabication, how to break down those syllables, spelling rules, prefixes, suffixes, and Latin and Greek roots. So basically, I think it helps that they have the placement tests and the reports and analytics. So a parent can see it. So with that ado, that's a very fast introduction. I think we're going to call on Ann Flanagan to speak next and how she does. I'm sorry, Dr. Vitti to speak next, and then Ann Flanagan, and then Javier and Terri.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Deborah. Thank you for the invitation to participate on this panel. I look forward to hearing what everyone has to say on this important topic. I can, take this topic and go in many different directions. On a personal level, as a dyslexic, as a parent, raising children who are dyslexic, and then probably most relevant as a superintendent, educational leader in the K-12 space. Are you guys hearing an echo, or is it good? Yeah, okay. I struggled in school throughout elementary school, middle school, high school. And, I say this transparently because I know a lot of students struggle this as well. Grew up in a working class immigrant family that didn't really have access to resources, didn't know how to navigate the educational system. And when I went through school, I thought I was dumb. I was called stupid. And I think I still deal with that as an adult. Luckily, I was a very good athlete, and that allowed me to go into college. And in college, latter part of high school, especially in college, I had some great high school teachers and professors that recognized my intelligence. And I started to see myself beyond an athlete and more of a thinker. And I actually took myself to a psychologist to be evaluated because someone said, as they were reading my writing and saw my troubles decoding words, even in college, that I was dyslexic. And I always thought that meant reversing letters. And it's more complicated than that. It's really a struggle to decode because the left hemisphere neurons did not connect with the right hemisphere. But long story short, I had myself evaluated, was diagnosed with a learning disability, and then taught myself how to read better. I knew how to read, but not well. So I went through phonics-based programs on my own in college, met my best friend, my wife, Rachel. We both were educators, and we had 4 children, 2 of which are dyslexic. And our oldest son, so let me back up, did really well in undergraduate school, and then went on to get a full presidential scholarship at Harvard to get my doctorate and my master's in educational leadership. And one of the reasons why I went to Harvard was because I knew I wasn't stupid, but I felt if I got a degree from Harvard, no one could ever call me stupid again. And that's, so why did I go into education? Because I realized that my own intellectual awakening, understanding who I wasn't, my empowerment came through my education. And I wanted to give back to those that didn't have the same opportunities that I had, but also in their own way were gifted and talented and could offer the world something. And I thought the best vehicle to do that was education. Became a teacher, Rachel became a teacher. So here are 2 well-educated parents doing all the things that they tell you to do with children at young age: read, talk, discuss things. And our oldest goes to school and can't read. Frustrated at school, starts to become depressed, doesn't want to come to school. And we were banging our heads against the wall about what's wrong, what do we do? So luckily, Rachel just advocated for our son and continued to try to understand what was going on, and fortunately met Deborah. And if it wasn't for Deborah's advocacy and understanding of Orton-Gillingham, basically what she just presented, my son would not have become a reader. My son now is an honor roll student and doing well in school. It's not easy, but he's doing well. And my experience to my son and Rachel's own advocacy allowed me to better understand my challenges, but I think most importantly, it allowed me to be a better superintendent when it comes to literacy. And what I've been able to do through my own experiences, my son's experiences, and Rachel's experience on how to advocate for him and other parents and children that struggle with reading is clearly to understand that the challenge with literacy is not a child issue. And it's not really even a parent issue. It's how we teach children how to read in the K-12 system, which is largely inadequate. We still function with a factory-like mentality where we teach all children the same way, and we expect in a miraculous way that they're all going to learn at a high level. And so we don't really individualize and differentiate how we teach children, and this conversation is on literacy. But early on, when we start seeing that students don't respond to what educators call tier 1 instruction, education systems in schools don't adapt. They don't modify what they're doing. They don't go deeper into the individual needs of children. And so you may see examples at schools and in districts of reteaching the content, rereading the book, going over passages, but that's all really just repeating the same challenge, the same strategies. And so what I have been fortunate to understand and start to implement is creating a multi-tier approach to literacy. Tier 1, all students receive through the core. Here in Detroit, we've trained all teachers on the new, not new anymore, but the Common Core standards, implemented curriculum to meet those standards. So everyone is being taught at grade level, but that's only the beginning part. Now, all students are going to respond to that positively. So what do you do differently when they're not responding to that core instruction? And so by hiring academic interventionists, these are individuals who they have a college degree, but are not certified as teachers. We're beginning to train them in ORTON-GILLINGHAM interventions and using ORTON-GILLINGHAM based intervention tools like BrainSpring, which is more of the face-to-face direct instruction, but now also using Max Scholar as a blended learning online vehicle to offer ORTON-GILLINGHAM intervention. So this is now starting to happen throughout the district. We've now trained all of our K-2 teachers in ORTON-GILLINGHAM, and now trying to expand that across the district. Also teaching our ESE, our exceptional student education students, our ESE or special education teachers that as well, and starting to implement Max Scholar with those students that have LDs that, dyslexia is a dirty word, unfortunately, and we don't say it, but really when we talk about learning disabilities or LDs through the individual education plan, we're mostly talking about dyslexic students. And they are not fully identifying that either throughout school systems. But I'm proud to say that we're moving in the direction of what all districts should be doing. As Deborah mentioned, most educators, when they go through undergraduate studies, are not learning the science of reading. They're not learning how to teach basic phonics to students. So they go into the classroom learning about general pedagogy, how to engage, understand the whole child. But when they actually go into classrooms and they take their textbook, which is a core tier 1 type of approach, they go through their normal textbook and they have no earthly idea how to engage a student that doesn't naturally respond to core instruction. And so that's when we get into deficit models of linked to poverty, LDs. We even talk about inadequacies based on genetics, but we go through all these different rationales why the child isn't learning without any solid strategies that are research-based to actually help the child to read. And that's why we see such failure when we look at literacy rates. That's why we see children that are disengaged in school. This is why we have behavioral problems. This is why children drop out. It has nothing to do with intelligence. It has to do with K-12s inadequately teaching children how to read when they don't initially respond to core instruction. And we've had a lot of headway in Detroit in doing this, but we have so much more to do, so much more training, so many more systems to develop, and then just ensure fidelity to implementation after that training, and more problem solving to implement. But I can say for the first time after leading other districts that I do feel we're moving in a comprehensive direction now to be explicit and systematic about the science of reading. Now we just need that time and those resources to scale and create consistency with implementation.
Beautiful.
Thank you. That was great, Nikolai. Anne will present how she's doing the program with Max Scholar, and it's quite unique.
So I was asked to talk about our implementation and the impetus for our implementation here in Okaloosa. We're a small district on the panhandle of Florida, and we were noticing that our kids were in intensive instruction, intensive remediation, you know, through tier 2 or tier 3, year after year after year. So what wasn't working? Why do we have this problem? Well, the reason we had the problem was but teachers were teaching phonics as part of their core comprehensive curriculum, just as was just mentioned, but the instruction was not really systematic, sequential, or explicit. It came as it came in the basal reader. We have not had a textbook adoption in Florida for 6 or 7 years, and the emphasis on those foundational skills weren't there. So we decided to use Max Scholar as our intervention program for our substantial reading deficient or reading deficient students. Dr. Levy came in and she trained our coaches, and I'm very, very fortunate to have a cadre of coaches with all of my elementary schools having access to a coach, and she trained them so that they could work with the classroom teachers on an ongoing basis on the routines and the implementation of the program. We also were very fortunate that Augustina, hello Augustina, I saw you earlier, had monthly webinars with our coaches to make sure that our data was appropriate and our kids were on track. And if there were any issues, we could address them with her during those monthly webinars. So I guess that, you know, that basically talks about our implementation. We've had good success. This is only our 2nd year. And last year, of course, we've shut down early because of COVID. And this year we got a late start because our school started a little bit later, and then our testing was later, but we're moving along in the right direction. And I think that that old adage of, well, in K2, you learn to read, and you know, after that, you read to learn. Well, that's not true, because kids need to learn to read all throughout their years. Is there anything I left out that you wanted me to say?
No, that was great. And you could just talk about the teachers, how they're so excited about it.
Our teachers actually love it because they did not know how, and again, I'm referencing what was just said, but they did not know how to teach phonics or phonemic awareness. They knew how to teach main idea, but you can't get the main idea or the central idea or the theme unless you can read the material. So I think that giving them that structure on how to teach those strategies and skills was really we really made it for them. I think our parents love to have that at home piece because they can work with the software at home. And now that we've got a lot of students online, the kids are able to have their small group instruction through a Zoom online, and then the parents can help them with the software at other times during the week.
Right, and they have the materials to do the Zoom from Max Scholar, which is great. Thank you so much. So Javier, do you want to talk about the middle school? Javier and I go back like 4 years when I trained other teachers, and he was sent to a school that was really in dire need, and from the district, well, he'll tell you, they called us in. Okay.
Sure, and thank you, Dr. Levy, and thank you to everyone who's on this call and sharing their thoughts. I was really excited to join this conversation on the literacy crisis and to discuss it from our standpoint. So we are a small middle school in the Bronx, New York. And prior to me being here, I met Dr. Levy a few years ago. It feels like now, thanks to what everything's going on, longer than that. But you know, I think it was only a few years ago when I worked for the superintendent of the district, and we were noticing the trend district-wide of there being a need to make a change in terms of increasing our access to literacy for our students. And so we, you know, luckily got some funding, and we were able to bring in Dr. Levy to assist with a few of our schools who I think to this day continue to contact Dr. Levy and the Max Scholar program. Because of that firsthand knowledge, when I took over my school, I immediately wanted to make a change here and decided this was the best route. You know, that the difficulty with middle school, and I guess, and I can echo Dr. Vitti's words earlier, is that it's the teachers not having the tools to then go into the deep reading, right? And so they want to go through the curriculum as it's stated and just plow through it, and then hope whoever comes along with it gets it, and those who don't, right? Not because they don't care about the kids, it's just that they don't have the skill set or the toolbox to take care of it. And so through our leadership here, what we've decided is we needed to have the courage to stop and start. At some point, someone has to stop and say, listen, you don't know it, you don't have it. Let's give you the tools to make you an independent thinker. And so using Max Scholar and the ORTON-GILLINGHAM process has given us one of those tools to achieve that. The curriculum especially for our population is culturally relevant. It's something that they want to engage in, you know, especially during this time of blended time. If there's no engagement, it doesn't matter what program and how wonderful it is, it's not going to do the thing that you need it to do. But students are reading about topics that are relevant to them. They're into it, and we've tried it with all grade levels. We actually had students who slipped through the cracks and then came clean in 8th grade. Like, I don't know how to read a lick, and then we put them on Max Scholar, and by the time they left here, they were reading. And so that goes to our scores going up. We're using it with all our populations. I gather to say all of our students are English language learners, even though it's not necessarily all of it, but because they don't have the academic English language, I just consider everyone in that bucket. And so we use all the skills towards that end. But prior to my arrival here, students who were labeled, because I'm not thrilled by this, but labeled English language learners were encouraged not to take state tests, not to do this, not to do that. And so the scores were artificially inflated because there were certain students who were encouraged not to take a test. So when we got them and gave them the courage to do it, and we saw what that was, it uncovered other things. And so again, we're attacking a literacy crisis through that point. We're going through the foundational pieces of phonics, of the whole ORTON-GILLINGHAM model of syllabic, everything that was presented earlier. I don't have to repeat it. Dr. Levy said it way more eloquently than I could. No. But what I do know is that it's making a difference, right? And we're doing it, and we're doing the work, and the kids are doing it and becoming independent thinkers. I also special shout out to Augustina, who I know is on the call as well, because my teachers all want her to continue to just, I guess, be by their sides while they do this process. But now we're doing it full-fledged. So this year we're really diving in, getting it from the very beginning, and then coupling that with giving the students high quality text. Because I'm just looking at the research of brain science and neuroscience, it says that's where the synapses fire, right? Giving them quality text, and not text because they say something says your reading level is whatever grade, and we'll give you C-spot run until you get that. No, it's giving them the Newbery text, it's giving them an award, a New York Times award-winning text, letting them struggle with it, then coupling that with a program that says, this is how I break it down. So it's a text I haven't interacted with. It's on my grade level, but I'm going to go back and use that information that I've learned through the process with Mr. or Mrs. So-and-so with Max Scholar, and now I'm putting it together. And so I'm ramping it up, using that. And I have that skill in my toolbox when I don't have that teacher in front of me. And so we're attacking the word gap problem. We're everyone's a teacher of reading here. We're all L's, and we're all going to be attacking this. Putting it one way is saying 30% of our kids are on grade level, but it's the horrific part. It's 70% of our kids are not. And so that's how we talk here, right? That means that we're not even at the 50% mark, which is, a low bar to begin with. We're not even there. So let's get there. And we're using that through Dr. Levy's work and as my esteemed colleagues are saying, the work that we're doing across the country. So thank you, I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. And he's a good example that we shouldn't neglect looking at our middle and high school students who didn't get those skills. They can still be taught it. And that's the only way they're going to get ahead. Thank you very much, Javier. Terri is new. We worked with Donna McLean for a good couple of years, but she can tell you how her implementation is going. And she's from rural Georgia, where she said there's a high amount of poverty. So Terri, I'm turning it over to you.
Good afternoon from South Georgia. I'm in Ware County, and the Waycross, Georgia is where our school system, our Board of Education is located, but our school system is really the largest one in this district. Even though we're rural, other people are more rural than us. We're about 70 miles north of Jacksonville. We have a very high poverty rate. Right now we're at 100% poverty for the area. So we're participating in the community eligibility provision, giving out supplemental food, trying to make sure our kids have what they need during this time. We have very high substance abuse. Meth is an issue here. A lot of single parents. DFAC stays pretty busy with some of that. Our social workers stay very busy trying to help our kids. We came back to school on August the 17th. We came back face to face because our kids don't have anybody at home to help them. We're handing out jetpacks and Chromebooks so that these children will have access to internet. So we have about 75% of our children back face to face. And our system, we were very fortunate. The state of Georgia has implemented a dyslexia pilot program, and they selected 7 school systems, and 2 of them were from the South Georgia area. So we got selected and we were excited. And that has allowed us to really focus on identifying children early, kindergarten through 3rd grade, that are exhibiting reading difficulties. And we are looking at what we can do to identify those children, to beef up their instruction, to provide supports for our teachers, to provide information and advocacy tools for the parents. And right now we're in the process of gathering data. For the first round, we did our universal screening for all of our children. The school we're focusing on in our system is Center Elementary, and that's my school because now I'm the school psychologist there. Before that, I was a special education teacher for 7 years in a neighboring county that's also very, very poor. And our teachers are getting trained in dyslexia. We're getting a program in Georgia to add that to their certificate. They'll have an endorsement that they've completed a program. And our teachers are participating in that. Part of our instruction and our remediation has been Max Scholar. And our teachers have really, really loved this program. Our students love it. And it's also $35 a year because we're poor down here. And we have to have something we can afford. We have to have something that's cost effective to implement to a lot of children. And our teachers, they have really said that the training that they got when Augustina came down was the best training they've had. It's very useful. They liked feeling like they had support, that there's somebody they can call and talk to. The software has been useful because they are trying to work on Zoom classes and Google Classrooms too, and virtual. Anything we can do virtually for the ones who can't come, we're trying to do. But you know, when I was listening to Dr. Levy when he first started talking about those statistics, those are our children, you know, and those that didn't read, so they dropped out. So then they have low-level jobs, even though they have high IQs, and then they get married and have children that are just like themselves. And I've been in this area for almost 30 years, and I'm teaching the children of the children I tried to teach to read. Sometimes I see that last name on a folder and I just want to cry, because environment or heredity, in that case, it's probably some of both. But sometimes when you see that last name on the folder, you see who filled out the social history form, and you know what kind of reading skills that child is in battles that child's going to face. But we are very excited. We're using Max Scholar with our with our students that are in our intervention program. We're using it with our special ed students, and we don't have a day go by when don't get an email saying add so-and-so. We need to add 3 more kids here or 2 more kids here. So we're just telling them, send me names, we're adding them. But that's kind of life right now in South Georgia.
Thank you very much. So, my passion is every child should be able to read. And I feel everybody on this panel, and I just feel we need to make more of a national consciousness of it. We're in an election year, and it really hurts me that this has not been brought up. And who is our future in our country? It's our children. It's a very, very important issue. So thank you, everybody, so much. And then Jamie, I guess she'll open it up to questions from our guests.
Yes, and we'll go ahead and start with Peter Singer. He's had his hand up for a while. Peter, do you want to ask your question? Peter, are you there?
Yeah, can you get rid of something on
No,
those?
I'm on a Zoom call. Peter, are you there? So I guess Peter no longer has a question. Do we have any questions from the audience?
I saw one question in the chat. I think it was probably in reference to what I said about LD, learning disabled. So that's a term that is often used in special education. We don't call it special education, we call it exceptional student education. ESC is the acronym in Michigan. I mean, in Detroit, Michigan still uses special education.
You're
Hey,
echoing.
folks, there's 2 people in the same room that have a mic on. It's like the old radio call-in.
Okay, so
Thank you.
yeah, it's not a term that I invented or I'm using loosely. It's how those students that have struggled, that have quote unquote disabilities in the reading process are labeled as LD on the individual education.
Dr. Vitti, you're still echoing quite a bit. Somebody else has.
There's 2 people, it's somewhere there's 2 people in the same proximity. You need to mute. Everybody mute, please. Okay, Jamie. Seems like it's...
Everybody except the speaker turn off.
I'm gonna find you.
Steve, I just muted everyone, so if you want to unmute Dr. Vitti so he can answer the question. Should work.
So, what I was saying is, I saw in the chat discussion section that I used the term LD, or learning disabled, or learning disability, and the individual educational process in many states. It is used as a way to define those students that have challenges with reading. And in most examples that I've seen is that those that are identified as learning disabled, or LD, are actually dyslexic. So that was the point that I was making, and that was the reference. It wasn't my own creation. And I am dyslexic, and I would have been labeled as LD, and 2 of my sons are labeled as LD because they're dyslexic.
Thank you for that, Dr. Vitti. We have another question from the audience. Joseph, do you want to go ahead and ask your question? I see that we have a question from.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Thank you for inviting.
Joseph, Joseph, wherever you are, there's someone next to you. that's on this same Zoom. Jamie, can you move on to the next one? I'm just going to mute him while he resolves that issue.
Do we have any other questions from the audience?
I have a comment and a question. Number one, I'd like to just acknowledge that, and which was acknowledged earlier, that Jamie, thank you for filling in as the moderator today. I know Greg would have loved to have been on this one. He has been tied up traveling around the country getting some medical advice and undergoing some treatment, all of which is going to work out well for him. And if anybody who would have enjoyed this talk, he would be the one person. He sends me texts with the 100 most beautiful words in the world and things like that. He's totally involved with words and reading, and he'd love to hear what you're saying. So I'm sort of letting him know that, and I hope fortunately we get to see the recording. Interestingly to me, I have a daughter who has 3 children, and the oldest boy was born, and my daughter has a diverse background. She's always been exceptional with languages and never had any problems with reading. And my son-in-law is also highly educated and bright guy. And they noticed that our oldest grandson actually had trouble when it became time to make sounds and words. And she basically diagnosed him with a motor apraxia, and was an early advocate into the school system when he was a very young kid, getting some therapy in which they used a lot of phonetic exercises to try to get his motor movements improved. The fascinating thing was that by age 2.5, he could read the New York Times. My daughter never sat and tried to read the New York Times with him. And it was clear that he was phonetically doing this. Maybe not understanding all the words, but he was at that point, but he was reading the words. And by 5, he was on a computer and exploring things. I'm sure that if he had not been diagnosed in early intervention with some aid, that this wouldn't have happened, and he might have been a very much delayed learner. And his learning, he's now in the 9th grade, and he writes for the school newspaper. He does things like that. So it's interesting that association. It's not exactly what you're talking about. But the other thing that seems the real benefit of this is, I've seen some statistic recently. If kids get promoted through school and don't keep up to grade level, particularly in reading and so forth, if you're a poor African-American male, your chances of being incarcerated and being in prison is enormously increased. So this goes way beyond just being appropriate for grade level. It goes on for your whole life level. I think it's a fantastic thing you're doing. You're muted.
Hello, Joseph here.
What's your question?
Can I ask? Okay, hi. 3 things. I want to thank Debbie and Elliot for inviting me. I enjoyed hearing a speaker from the South Bronx because I went to PS 66 there about 68 years ago. So that was very nice. The interesting question I have is about the incarceration. I mentioned it was $130,000 to incarcerate a young person. What does it cost to do Max Scholar? I mean, so how much are we saving? Are you able to hear me?
Deb.
Dr. Levy, do you want to answer
It's
that?
not working.
We can hear you now.
While we're waiting for me, I see Brenda Ward, my elementary principal from Queens, and I just wanted her to share her experience because she has a great implementation and her results.
Hi, I know Joseph had a question, so he wanted to know what would be the savings for using Max Scholar as opposed to those for those that are incarcerated per year. So I think that merits an answer.
Max, maybe I can answer it. Well, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
Max Scholar costs $40 if a school buys fewer than 100 license. And if there's a large volume, we can sell it to them for under $15, sometimes as low as $12. $12 a year versus $130,000 a year. I think society needs to listen to those numbers and to make a major thrust towards early childhood education and worry more about kids that don't learn how to read rather than try to get everybody into college. Because if you enter college and you can't read, you know what's going to happen. So our philosophy is early childhood education is really where the thrust should be. Okay, Dr. Deborah actually walked back into this room. She has a question.
I just saw that Brenda Ward came in from, can you speak a little bit, Brenda?
Sure. Hello to everyone. Want to greet Doctors Elliot and Deborah, Levy, and everyone on the panel for sharing such critical information regarding tackling this national crisis in reading. I started out, my name is Brenda Ward. I'm the principal of PS 273 in Richmond Hill, Queens in New York. And I started out in my educational career in high school, and I realized there, so I can identify with Nikolai and all those that are in the upper grades, upper schools, of the difficulty teachers had with teaching our students how to read. And so I started in middle school, went to high school, and I came back down to elementary school because I knew that the problem was primarily there. And many times school leaders focus on the testing grades. And I didn't want to focus on the testing grades because I knew if we fixed it on the lower grade, then the testing grades would be okay. And so our school presently uses Max Scholar primarily for our kindergarten and first graders because that's what we can afford. If I could afford more, I would use it for everyone in the school if they needed it. So, but also we also use it for our lowest third. And we've been using Max Scholar for this is our third year. I will tell you that the PD that they provide, professional learning, is amazing. Augustina has been wonderful, and so has Travis. Just excellent support system, which is what you need. And my testimony, I'll say, is that we started 3 years ago, and I'll say that our third graders last year, before the pandemic, the 18-19 school year, our school moved up 19 points on the state assessment. And it was primarily because of the skill set that our third graders had, and that they had been using Max Scholar for 3 years. And so learning how to read is so important. And as everyone has stated, that systematic and explicit instruction is important. For my school has 74% of English language learners. And as one of the principals said, that yeah, everybody, as far as I'm concerned, is an English language learner. Even myself, I'm still trying to learn the English language. And so it was important for us to have that systematic, explicit learning teaching in phonics, because many of the, they don't understand, or we want them to be leaders of their own learning. And the only way that they can do that is we have to really put a big focus on them learning how to read. And so we're very happy and proud and happy that Max Scholar has come our way. And I really, as when I'm looking at the budget, Max Scholar, and Dr. Levy knows, that is one of my priority software programs that I put in the budget before I put anything else in there, because I want to make sure that we put a dent in this illiteracy rate. I think I'll stop there.
Thank you so much. I just want you to hear from the private school sector from Paul Avrahini. She's been using Max Scholar for 4 years.
I believe it's longer, Deborah. We stopped counting. I've known Deborah I've been in Miami for 13 years, and I direct a program for students with learning differences in grades 6 through 12. And I wanted to say that reading challenges do not discriminate according to race, economic level, because our students have a lot of advantages. But what I saw with some of our sixth graders beginning in sixth grade, who did not get the early intervention, I'm a firm believer of intervening early. And as an educator for over 40 years, I've gone through many reading programs and trained under them. My master's is in learning disabilities and my EDS in leadership and curriculum. And so when I met Dr. Levy, I was just so excited because I had gone through an ORTON-GILLINGHAM training way back and started going to some of her training and looking at the program. And what I saw is that it was engaging, it was meaningful, it was relevant, and it addressed the issues that our students were facing. We were very deliberate about how we implemented it. There are some students that would not have matriculated to high school if it wasn't for Max Scholar. They are now at the university, some in private universities, thriving. And what we did is we removed them from certain classes during their middle years to address the reading issues so that they could move on. And I'm doing it again this year with one student who just joined us. And we think it's important enough that he has to miss some other subject to fit in the day so that he can be tutored through the use of the ORTON-GILLINGHAM approach. So I have had so many students that have gone through the program and have been successful. They are now in honors programs. My own granddaughter, who went to a school in Georgia outside of Atlanta, was not at one point was not being promoted to 4th grade. And I had already met Dr. Levy and I said, what can we do virtually? And she started being tutored in 3rd grade. And she did so well that the teachers wanted to know what magic did we use to get her this far. And since then she's moved on and she's now at our school and we're continuing Max Scholar so that all the skills that she still is challenged by are reinforced and revisited. So I thank Dr. Levy and the Levy Learning Center. It's been a great association. Thank you.
So we don't seem to have any more questions from the audience. So I just want to say thank you to all of our incredible panelists and thank you for everything that you're doing for literacy in the United States. And I just wanted to ask Aaron Fleck if he has any questions or any closing remarks. Aaron?
Am I on?
You're on.
This was the most interesting and an opportune time to know what's happening and what is needed in the country. I want to thank each one of the presentations for the most interesting part of their subject. It's something that we need and we should bring it into programs in different governments, especially local areas, to help not only the students in high school, but in afterlife, when it is most important with the coming revolution that we have in industry and the economy. It is totally necessary for them to be able to read properly. And I thank them from the bottom of my heart. It's something that I love to have heard about. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
That's it. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see some of you next week.